Growing with fishes. Growing with fishes.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Growing with Fishes podcast, episode 225. This week we have Shore Grown from New Jersey. Thanks for
What's
joining.
up? Hells yeah, what's up, guys?
How's it going, man?
We also got Marty from AP Meds.
How's it going?
We just posted Marty's presentation from the virtual Aquaponic Cannabis conference yesterday, just in the singular format. So if you want to check that out over on the Ponics YouTube channel, definitely go check that out. Or you can check out the full format of the conference on there.
Yeah, if I remember right, that is dual read zone question and answer session and U siphons. So if you want to check that out.
Oh yeah,
pretty handy.
All kinds of fun stuff. So we were starting to talk to a little bit before the show. I think a lot of people know that New Jersey is kind of getting ready to really go full hog with legalization finally after quite a long struggle and kind of years of maybe not the best situation with medical and things like that. So I remember back when Christie first legalized medical, and it was like, man, if that man can have a heart and at least legalize it for kids. Now granted, it wasn't really what we wanted, but correct me if I'm wrong, he was the one first. Was it him or was it the guy after him? I'm pretty sure it was him that passed the original one with the kids, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. He was the first guy that was officially coined for getting the ball rolling.
Yep. And not that we like him very much on the show, but hey, credit where credit's due. At least he did start the ball rolling there. So, tell us a little bit about kind of what's going on in New Jersey. Maybe a little bit of background on that, and then tell us about what you do there. And you do a lot of education. You kind of provide a lot of resources for people there in the local community that don't have kind of the people like us to go to there in New Jersey. And a lot of these newer states don't have kind of the gurus and problem solvers and things like that on the show or available to them, or don't know about different shows or podcasts because there isn't that same kind of community that there is on the West Coast. You know what I mean? It's definitely something that we notice here in Oklahoma. So tell us a bit about yourself, and then a little bit about kind of what's going on in New Jersey.
Yeah, we, myself and a couple partners started Shore Grow about 3 years ago. This was right after Murphy got elected in, and he came in on that 200 days I'm going to provide kind of campaign that essentially got him into office, in my opinion, in the first place. But we set up shop anticipating that would be the beginning of the end, and it took quite some time before we got there. But just really, as you mentioned, the number one thing that I noticed, we went really above and beyond on the customer service aspect because of the lack of community that you're kind of discussing, the situation you faced out there. And yeah, it's almost been like just exactly the way you phrased it. So early out the get-go, we really kind of focus primarily on education. We do free monthly classes, always the last Thursday of the month. And now we just started doing the live streams every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock, the grower sessions, we call them, and shit like that has been the number one way that we can spread awareness and kind of help a lot of new growers. Like, it's fascinating. Most of them come into the shop and they want to get LEDs. Like, it still blows me away that people, and I'm not dissing or anything, I'm not choosing sides or anything. It's just interesting because a lot of the West Coast growers, HPS is the end all, as it shifts back and forth and shit. But I feel like it's people. When I talk to a lot of West Coast growers, they're like, and people just want LEDs, and I'm like, a lot of the new growers, like and I assume it's just because that's what they see it on all the influencers and stuff on Instagram and stuff. But anyway, it's
The other part of it too is as of January 1st, everyone in California has to have LEDs now for all new construction. You can't run HIDs anymore, and that'll definitely help force the market pretty quickly there.
Shit.
And that's going to happen in a lot of the more progressive states. I think that's going to, a betting man would say that New York and some of the other more Democratic states are going to lean towards that. Washington State, Oregon, they're both probably going to end up doing that pretty soon as well. Any of those states are going to, probably adopt this kind of stuff. One of the other things that we're seeing too is for greenhouse construction requiring light depth as well in a lot of states. And I could see that happening in New Jersey. They like their skies there and stuff like that. People are real big on their farming and stuff there, and they don't want their neighbors' crops to be bothered. So I could see that being a regulation realistically in New Jersey as well. And we've even seen that affect aquaponic growers that are just growing lettuce, where they're being required if they want to run lights to have light depth, which is kind of insane.
With the LED requirements and stuff like that, is it just generally LEDs, or is it more so wattage per square canopy footage?
No, it's strictly LEDs. You can't use, yeah. Yep.
Interesting. So yeah, I mean, New Jersey, it all really started with Christie and stuff like that. And then when Murphy got elected into office, he kind of came to us selling the golden ticket. And, generally speaking, what I tend to notice ever since he got into office is that it became essentially a pissing contest between him, Sweeney, and Scutari. Really between the three of them, in a sense, Murphy is from the northern part of the state where Big Pharma is notorious. And then you've got, Sweeney specifically down in AC, where things are typically another type of organization. And don't quote me on any of this. This is just all, opinion as far as I'm concerned, but they've been battling on who's going to split up the loot for the past 2 years, essentially. And it's gotten to the point where they have to kind of figure it out because re-election year is coming up. And in my opinion, if they want to get reelected, they're going to have to get something done. And they were playing kind of ignorant while they were doing their battles, divvying up the loot, saying, oh, I'm not going to. And the media was all over the place. It was a beautiful fucking car crash to watch, entertainment wise. But as far as what actually got done and what will be getting done, there are very, recently speaking, there's a lot of push for the recreational market. And I'm not sure, just to get into the medical market in New Jersey right now, especially, everything got a lot worse after COVID, but even pre-COVID, there's a very, very small demand being met, even on the patient market. A lot of patients, especially now with COVID specifically, have a very difficult time getting medicine when it is available. And when it is available, it's typically very low quantities. Most of the operating legal facilities here are not able to even put a dent in the medical market. And I'm sure there's some stupid statistics to prove it. But, I tend to deal with a lot of patients at the shop, personally speaking, and they're always talking about how if they want to get the latest drop from one of the facilities, they have to sign up for it 24 hours in advance to be there on these certain ridiculous pretenses. That's sometimes even physically impossible, depending on how disabled you are. But it's kind of ridiculous, and a lot of times there's even no guarantee that you are going to get the medicine that day. It really depends on when you show up. But it's kind of silly to even consider launching a rec market like they plan on doing. Providing the rec market with cannabis without being able to even, I would safely say at least say 50% of the medical market. So it's when they started to announce and work on the recreational market. This is more specifically within the last month or two. This was after they put it on the ballot, and they made this the state of New Jersey kind of say yes or no to formulating a cannabis regulatory commission composed of like 5 people. that would do all the details and regulation as far as what licenses we're giving out are going to be given out under what context, so people can be able to do business and so on and so forth. So when it comes to the actual nitty gritty and details, a lot of them have not even been announced. A lot of this rec bill that's being discussed right now is pretty much saying like, yes, we're going to establish a rec market. Yes, there's going to be a commission that, or I should say a lot of what people voted on when they got the ballot was, yes, they're going to establish the rec market, and yes, they will establish the commission to kind of monitor and regulate it. And that's what people voted for. And if I'm not mistaken, 60% of the state voted yes on those ballots. So when they started talking about launching the rec market, the politicians or the policymakers were no longer able to remain naive and say they didn't think the people wanted it. And that's one of the big things that's changing the situation right now. If anybody has any questions or anything, please pop in or jump in.
No, you're doing great. And we'll take questions in chat. So if any pop up, we'll let you know.
Oh, cool. Thank you, Marty. So when all that's more recently, the state voted on it, which pretty much told the policymakers that the state, we want them to work on it. A lot of people thought if they were voting on that, then cannabis was going to be legal and it was all going to be fucking hunky dory, but it's not the way politics work. So that's the current situation, and really what they're trying to specifically put out is the nitty gritty of the recreational market, not very detailed. Like I shouldn't say nitty gritty, like a basic basic announcement, and then the regulation would come in and put out all the details as far as what licenses are being granted, so on and so forth. And that information is available now on the current bill if anybody's really interested and want to go through 250 pages of fucking legal mumbo jumbo. When
So-
it comes,
Sorry. So you do you have a grow store, right? And you also put out education. You do all kinds of cool stuff you're doing. You have I see you all the time broadcasting on your help show.
that's really been our bread and butter. I used to let me say it this way, when I first started growing a long time ago, I spent like $5,000 on this stupid ass little box crate that I found on High Times, stupid shit, and I made some really, really bad fucking decisions.
What were they called? They had a name for them. They had a brand.
Oh gosh, I can't remember.
Once in a while, you'll see one at a flea market or something, and they're actually they're like a collector's item now. There's like old stoners that are like looking for them. So if you see one that's in real good condition, like put it on eBay, you'll get way more money for it.
No shit. Yeah, I still have it.
It's
Yeah.
green, right? The one you're talking about?
Mine was like it was like I got it home and I looked at it and I was like, oh fuck, they just like put a bunch of components together in a box. So, like there was no fabrication. Like those guys probably put that shit together for like $800, but and it was a 600-watt HPS in like a cabinet. It had to be like 5 feet tall and 3 feet wide, and I was like CO2 tanks, and I had all the bells and whistles, but I didn't know how to do shit with it. But so yeah, I try to help people not fucking make that mistake, and typically speaking, it was very confusing. So I tend to heavily suggest any new growers out there
Is it a BC box? Somebody in chat said. I think it's called a BC box. I might be wrong. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. It was just I thought it might ring a bell.
That was I mean, I pretty much advocate people start low and slow. Take it simple, some ocean forest with some fox farm on your first couple of runs, and then get fancy. Because I think, and I see it all the time, because a lot of people look at me and they're like, dude, don't you want to sell me product? And I was like, dude, I know you're gonna love this shit and you're gonna be buying product. Like, just relax. And they look at me crazy. And some guys, it takes them 2 years of growing fucking 10 plants at a time before they realize that if you cut the newts back a lot, the plants will actually fucking yield more. It's like wild. But so yeah, I'm really, and I enjoy the educating process too. Looking at doing like a podcast and all that jazz.
So what are some of the common pest issues you're seeing out there in that part of the world? I remember what was going on in the Philadelphia side of the river. What kind of pests are you guys having on the other side of the river?
Most common right now, and it's been really weird for the last 4 or 5 months, is fucking fungus gnats are out the ass. And I think it's just majority, about 80%, I would say, the growers I deal with are new growers, like in the chorus of the sense. And overwatering is a struggle that I seriously, I fight on the regular. Um, Aside from that, nothing too out of the ordinary, mites and PM, and I feel like that's almost everywhere. We haven't seen the Borg mites specifically. I can say that. I'm always on the lookout for those motherfuckers because I've read some terrible fucking blog posts about them.
Oh yeah, we've I know we've put some stuff out there on them. If anyone's looking for a really good insect resource, we have a whole I have a whole playlist on beneficial insects and non-chemicals solutions that I have on there. And then you can also check out Zenthanol. He's been a guest on our show. Definitely someone I would highly advise to hitting up on your stuff as well. But so what do you recommend? What do you recommend in there for fungus gnats when people come in?
Okay, so are you familiar with the amazing Dr. Enzymes?
Yep, Dr. Zymes. Yep.
Do you know what exactly it is about that? Is it just because it's an enzyme and it doesn't leave any residual on people that might have to use it in flour? I mean, I had one customer that had really bad PM, and he told me he did a pretty concentrated wash using that and was able to get most of it off in an emergency situation at least. And I was just always curious of how it was able to do that, not really leave residual.
So it's like water, yeast, citric acid are all the
Potassium sorbate was one of the other ones. That's one of the minor ones. I remember that.
right. So all of your main enzyme sprays are basically slightly different variations or concentrations of those, 4 or 5 different things. So the reason there's no oils in it is probably the biggest reason why, it's able to evaporate off. So I've used it here. I don't use it late in flower really, but that's more just a personal choice than anything. So, but I've used it with pretty good success. It's probably the highest concentration of all of the major enzyme sprays that I've worked with. So like Big Time Enzyme, Nukem from Flying Skull, and Dr. Zymes are all those same basic recipes, but switched up a little bit. And Dr. Zymes seems to be the higher concentration of those.
So I says there's a gentleman, C Baker in chat says citric acid based product. Yeah, that was kind of my understanding as well, that it was kind of more of a low pH type product, similar to, there's a couple of different low pH products that are out there. Definitely one of the good ones. For PM, it works great. I think a lot of people try to use it for things that aren't PM and don't have the same kind of results. I know I haven't had as good results with some of the other insect applications that we've tried it on, at least. But PM, it does a real good job of knocking it back. The other stuff that we're big fans of is Sonata and Cease for especially a larger scale PM. You can use both of them in flower. Sonata is a little bit better if you're kind of more in a late stage panic mode. I also, and this is just a general observation, so Sonata is Bacillus pumilus, and I've noticed that Bacillus pumilus products here in Oklahoma, we seem to have a more aggressive strain of powdery mildew. It seems to be more resistant to a lot of traditional solutions, or it still works on it, but it can resist it longer. It definitely seems to be, the Bacillus pumilus seems to do a better job at the more aggressive strain of PM that we get in the south. And again, New Jersey is going to have a similar climate to Oklahoma in terms of humidity for anyone growing outdoors. Might be something to think about with the Bacillus pumilus for people that are struggling if their other products aren't having luck.
We sell before the oh God, excuse me, the Dr. Enzymes. We were typically we go leaning towards the greener cleaner, and they have another one, the root cleaner. It's not very microbe friendly, and they're pretty honest about that on the labeling, thank goodness. So I typically don't really suggest it anymore, but I do know that shit is very effective. I had 1 or 2 customers come back and were like, what the fuck is that shit? Like, I did a Hail Mary. Yeah, and I've noticed with pests and the Dr. Enzymes too, it's great to kind of fuck their day up every here and there, but if you use it constantly, even with the increases of dosages, intensity, it doesn't really seem to have a big pest application, despite killing, the pests and their eggs, small soft body larvae.
I like to use it
Yeah.
my last spray before I release beneficials. So it'll be like my last knockdown spray before I release. Like just recently on this release, I released some pirate bugs and some road beetles and some lacewing. So the day before I released all those, I went through and hit everything pretty good. So that's usually kind of the way that I use it. I don't use any sprays really consistently, so I tried to stick with most of the beneficials.
Yeah, so like I said, I've used it in a similar manner. If we're going to switch stuff between rooms or brought it in from another room or something like that, doing it as a quick cleanse in between, like you're saying, I think it works great. And then, or something like to spray on your clones, especially before sale, and just hit them one last time before they go out the door, just on a CYA kind of thing.
I'm a big fan of dipping instead of anything that's that small. Like sprays, there's just a chance that you'll miss something, and if you dip it, it's just submerged. Steve's a chew toy over there. But so I'm a big fan of dipping any small plant, and even with Dr. Enzymes, I find it's more efficient too. Like spraying, you tend to waste a lot. So anything that's small enough to dip, I'm usually a fan of just submerging it for 10 seconds or so, giving it a good swirl. But I do think it's effective. But just like anything else, you gotta, I'm always a big advocate of testing using a microscope and making sure the bugs are dying with what you're treating with. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time and probably spreading bugs around and making it worse. So what you're treating with is not actually killing your insects. You're just probably walking around using your wand to spread more bugs around everywhere else. So before you start, just test it on some insects and use your microscope to make sure that they're actually dying when you spray them, and then you'll make sure that you're not making things worse instead of better.
I got a lot of first timers that see bugs in their garden, and they will, I shit you not, they'll come in the next day and be like, what do I need to buy to kill that spider? Is it a spider mite? And I'm like, did you see it? It wasn't a spider mite if you saw it. No, it had 8 legs. Okay, well, don't worry, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, go find some more, bring them in.
Yeah, even in the context of some small, smaller critters in the soil, like people will think there's spider mites living or something, and I'm not saying, everybody's a beginner, everybody learns, but identifying the pest first properly is something I have to really emphasize, because a lot of people, they'll start to see bugs, and a lot of newbies, I should say, they'll start to see bugs and they just start shitting their pants. They don't know how to deal with it. They don't know what the fuck it is, and they automatically assume it's bad.
I think the number one thing I think people panic on are springtails. I think I've had more people come to call and show me a picture and be like, I have mites. Just a springtail, it's fine.
Yeah, I get messages a lot of people thinking they have reed aphids, and they're just springtails. So definitely sit down a lot.
Not to necessarily switch back to Dr. Enzymes, but are you guys, have you ever talked to them? Have you ever called in their customer rep line? Because they always have this, they must be like a really small company, a family something, But I've had some weird questions that I've had to confirm with them. Um, and they've said some pretty wild shit. Like, they had some people use it to treat athlete's foot fungus, mites and funguses on pets is a common thing. And it's apparently almost completely universal aside from digestion, of course. Um, and what they'll tell you is just whatever you're treating, don't get it in its eyes. And that's the same thing that applies for human beings. It's like the only thing that you could do wrong with that product is get it in your eyes or something else's eyes. But anything else, it's only going to help.
Probably, I would assume.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I've heard some pretty cool stories about them, and their fucking logo is their theme is Garden Naked. I mean, come on, come the fuck on. I mean, but anyway, enough about them.
Too allergic to trichomes to do that. I'd be so itchy. So what are some of the other common problems you're seeing aside from those?
It's really overwatering. That's number one. Overwatering and overtending. Overtending, including feeding, pruning, and training specifically. People are just anxious to get really good and do what they see. I feel like on IG. Um, it's you kind of got to calm them down a little bit and say, watch the plant grow naturally first, because it's all about, I try to emphasize it's all about identifying the shifting of the life cycles depending on the phenos and yada, yada, yada. Just really more so listening than speaking with the nutrients in the watering can. And it's like, it's crazy. It's like people will grow for so long over watering and doing the finger trick. I'm anti-finger trick. Like I hear about it all the time in the shop, and I'm like, just
So
look.
explain that, because a lot of people swear by that. So explain to people why you don't like that.
I don't like it even when using cloth pots or air pots, and specifically speaking from a beginner's perspective, because it's 90% of what I deal with. Is a lot of people will put the finger in the top 6 inches of like a 5-gallon pot to identify the moisture level. But what happens winding up, especially with the new grower that's watering every other day, is that bottom 6 inches of the pot winds up being constantly moisture, and then inevitably goes anaerobic, switching up the pH. And then a new grower sees deficiencies happening and thinks it's because the plants are hungry. And it's just a vigorous cycle of repetition. Like I literally can't tell you how many times I've been asked, should I be watering every 2 days? Like a gallon at a time too. So it's just I've gotten to the point where actually I defer to the blue mats now for beginners, despite the kind of not tricky, but arduous and setup. I feel like once you set them up, it kind of takes the human error out of watering. So I've been kind of banking on that lately, and it's been making my life easier. And that's been having me focus on the living soil aspect of the growing for beginners, because then in a sense the microbes will feed the plant and the blue mats will water the plant, and it'll make it almost in a sense like foolproof. Not foolproof because it's never foolproof, but easier, because it takes just the human error out. Typically I got new beginners doing living soil, and we just kind of feed them microbes, sugars, use some humics here and there. And a lot of I sell a lot of the coast to Maine living soil specifically. Have you guys fucked with any of that by any chance?
No, we're both west of the Mississippi. At least I haven't. Maybe Marty has.
No, most of this, it's so easy to source things in Oregon. It's really sort of stupid. Um, we have like Down to Earth, for instance, is right out of Eugene up here. So, like, and they're right here locally. I just bought some soil from the local co-op store that was actually really great. It's all natural, organic, and very, it's a very good mix and came out great. So just an abundance of growing resources on the West Coast compared to the East. It's not even fair.
I had another guy, a lot of the times on the coast of Maine around like day, if you're not feeding heavy on the sugars and stuff, or not even, if you're not feeding at all, typically around 30 to 45 days, you start to lose a lot of nitrogen and calcium. And they have a flowering organic dry additive, a fishbone meal. That's a 513, 18% calcium as well, to help through the flowering end of things. And I have another buddy that runs the M3, the Michigan 3. That's another living soil brand out here, and he was saying he can do water only for almost the full cycle. So I'm trying to really get a gauge on the coast of Maine specifically as a living soil, generally speaking.
It's definitely a question I have is, and maybe you guys have opinions on it. Why do people want to just add water? To me, it's like giving up control to the soil and trusting that everything's gonna go perfect. And I think that, me personally, likes to fine tune and screw with stuff, but I can see the benefit of simplicity. But it's just always something that always seemed kind of strange to me.
Yeah, for me, I'm just guessing, I guess, but I would say probably just the ease of it, to not have to feed anything, measure anything. Like you just put it all in the pot and water it until it's done. And even on the commercial side, I could see that both on the home grow and the commercial side being attractive. And I end up somewhere down the middle, like I dose, just a few times at the beginning of flower. But other than that, pretty much everything else gets mixed into the soil layer of my dual root zone pot. And then I top feed it, 2 or 3 times over its entire cycle. So it's somewhere in between. I've done it other ways too. Like when I first started doing aquaponics without dual root zone, I was feeding like, 3 to 4 times a week, especially in heavy flower, all the way up until like week 5 or 6 when I started tapering off. So it just kind of, especially in aquaponics, where at least in our water system, we have to keep a relative amount of potassium and phosphorus, so that our fish stay healthy and don't die. So if we don't have a dual root zone layer, we have to feed more often. But in a dual root zone where we can keep it up and separate, then we can have heavier concentration, so we don't have to feed as often. So I feel like there's trade-offs and balance. Like I know Steve feeds his on a more, let's say, measured and regular feeding schedule than I feed mine, as in top dressing whenever I have time, within certain windows. So there's definitely different ways of doing it. But I think that as far as the just adding water part of it, it's attractive because it's easy and simple. And then you also get the crowd, oh well, all the world grows with just rainwater naturally, so we should be able to just water soil and have it work if we do it right. So that's why I think the water only crowd is sort of a conglomeration of all of those things. And I'm not against it. It's not. I don't think it's a bad philosophy to go by. People have a lot of luck with it once they master exactly what you're talking about, which is, how often to water and when, especially when you have like varying humidity in your grow room. It can be tough to really identify. You get used to doing it on the schedule, and then as your humidity changes or varies, you can, or your lighting schedule changes, you'll find that you'll be retaining water longer. And different things can change. So it's one of the things I love about dual root zone is, I water a plant twice in its entire life. Once I set it into the aquaponic system, it just takes up as much water as it wants to. So really, I only have to water it long enough for it to grow all the way down through the pot and take up water from the system below. So about 1 to 2 waterings. Some plants that are larger, when they come out, only require 1 watering. And then eventually they'll just take up water from the system. So again, great for home growing and commercial growing because you don't have to train people on how to water, which is arguably one of the more difficult things to be able to master. So
I've tend to notice, and mind you, we are like there's two other shops in New Jersey. One of them doesn't really deal with residential hobbyists or starters, and the other one's in Philly. Is pretty much right over the river. So we're really the only hydro shop when you even Google hydro shops in New Jersey. And what I'm just getting is I deal with a lot of first timers. And at first I used to try to suggest what I thought would be the best way for them. But then I really just wound up being like, okay, soil hydro, you know, you soil, is your focus on quantity, or, if you choose a soil question, you're honestly focused on quality as opposed to quantity with hydroponically. But past that, the question is, do you want to do this a lot, or do you want this to be like kind of easy and kind of take, a less intimate path when it comes to growing? Some people, they're really busy with work and they don't have a couple hour or even an hour a day. They will, and I'll pretty much squeeze like, look, you got to get your head in there a couple times a day, regardless. The more, if you're not going to be in there a lot. But then on the same breath, and it's not like it's like 80%, 20% one way or the other. It's pretty evenly distributed. As far as like who wants, as for many people that get into it intensely and people that get into it casually, and typically speaking, I mean, if a lot of guys get into it casually, they started to get more and more passionate about it, just because it's the majestic process of growing that plant, something about it therapeutic wise, and that's what I tend to notice keeps having the medicine at the end result is great, but it's weird because I see people fall more in love with the process than the product, and it's makes it uh pretty comforting. Otherwise, it would just be like, just fucking selling products. But yeah, it's nice because I see a lot of new beginners finding relief. It's therapeutic or mentally or physically. It's cool.
Oh,
Personal
yeah.
preference.
Nothing quite like plant therapy for sure. It's also reminding me of, I don't know if you guys saw this week's Hamilton Pharmacopoeia, but they had that was quite the interesting one where it's like, is it more addictive to make it or to smoke it? And it's like, I won't get into the drug that was on it because I don't want this episode to get flagged. But if you guys aren't a fan of Hamilton's Pharmacopoeia, what the hell are you doing? Go out there immediately and go watch that after this episode because it's literally the best show on earth.
I was just like,
It's on season 3.
I was just about to say, you better be careful. We don't want to get flagged.
Yeah,
again.
no, we're not. Yeah, we're not gonna mention that what the surprise is. You guys can go watch it, but it was quite interesting. But they had a very similar thing about people getting addicted to the process more than the actual final creation.
In the last 3 years, we've tended to really kind of pick up on when we get influxes of new growers, and despite what's going on legally, it seems to be more of a cultural shift. The more and more they discuss it in the media, and it becomes acceptable culturally in New Jersey, because this is all pretty radical shit for New Jersey. I know you guys have been chilling out there for a while, but the more and more it gets culturally accepted, the more and more people start to feel comfortable, because everybody has been in New Jersey waiting for a long time, and we tend to see that there's demographics from all ages, evenly distributed. I really shit you not. And it's interesting also, like, for lack of better analogy, high school clique demographics, like nerds, jocks, yada, 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 all those different variances. It's pretty cool from a personal perspective, being able to watch it kind of evolve and see how certain plants can fucking medicine can help us all, culturally speaking, bringing us together.
Yeah, just, the community on top of it. I mean, there's so many fun things about growing to start with. First of all, it smells great, it looks great, tastes great, especially if you're a connoisseur. Like, there's no better medicine than your own. Like, and that's just what it is. Then you have, the ritualistic aspect of, figuring out what your schedule is, and, sort of being in charge of everything from beginning to end and getting a harvest, like, just, I think there's something about, doing it all yourself and then consuming it. It's not that much different than growing a really good tomato and then eating it. I think it's, pretty similar, except for it, like, uh, the medicinal value of the cannabis is much more immediate than the homegrown tomato, but arguably pretty good as well. But that's kind of the similarities that I draw in it. And I find it fun to grow in a lot of different ways. Like, I don't just do aquaponics like I talked about on here before. I like doing, messing with like sub-irrigated planters or raised beds or hugelkultur beds or different ways of growing, because it's fun and you can see how, the plants grow differently. And then cannabis, you have all the different variations of strains, seeing them grow differently and smell differently, and have different growth patterns, or some of them will respond better to being trained in certain ways better. Like, I've grown this same strain called Thorsberry a couple of different times now, and it's probably by far the most efficient plant I've grown to a scrog net, in that, it'll lay out and just fill out a net really nice. Whereas, like, Snowman or some of the other ones, some of the OGs that I've grown, you can train them to a net, but they don't, they still don't really fill it out and get as bushy in the same way. So seeing all those little differences in how they all grow, it is super fun. And if you've never done a phenotype hunt, that's really cool too, when you have a whole bunch of different phenos of the same strain. So, you sprout 100 different seeds of uh, the same strain, and see all the variations of each one of those seeds. Even though they're the same strain, they can all be, they're all going to be slightly different, and selecting the ones you want. It's just a fun process to go through, and getting the flower at the end and seeing variations in those. And it's just um, you can really go as deep as you want to. If you just want to throw out some seeds and grow some stuff and smoke it and be content with that, you're good there. But it's a rabbit hole you can go down if you want to, just have fun with the community. We'll be happy to share with you. You can generally find, people that are, doing the same thing and want to talk about it and enjoy it. We'll share with you. Half the time we'll give you some to take home. It's a very it's a very open community, and that's what I really like about it.
Yeah, what I'm seeing a lot of guys getting on recently too is like the octopot systems, the underpot systems and stuff like that. Actually about to get some, because I haven't done a really a dual roads since I was doing aquaponics. And one guy in particular, it's funny because he started out, he ran Nectar with some pretty good soil, and he did the whole regimen, the Bible and everything, and did astronomically well on his first grow with a couple thousand waters. And then he started getting heavy-handed on the newts. He started kind of losing sorts. He went through a phase with heavy 16. Then he went through a phase with, I had a bunch of house and garden laying around the shop, and he really did well with that, but he was still way too salty and not enough microbes. Even in like a more soil like media. I think this is when he started running the Nectar Soil, which, if you guys don't know, is like pretty much like fucking Pro Mix. There's nothing in it.
Right.
And then he fell back on the Nectar Soil with a heavy micro formula, and then he came back on the salts like 75%. And then he was able to get to like his first initial nectar grow quality again. And so what I'm starting to see is he's the first guy that, or the first customer, I should say, gave me a really phenomenal sample with using some salts, granted in a very dialed back sense, but it kind of, you know, a lot of new growers, when we do the soil and hydro talk, it's like you're either going to grow for yields or you're going to grow for quality. So you might start well with your soil and your green as grass and you've never popped beans before. And then kind of the finesse is using a lot of the bioactivators and goodness, microbes, stuff like that to get the yields up with the quality as well, obviously. And then from there, most growers just go fucking buck wild. They're like you mentioned, Marty, before, they're down the rabbit hole. I think that's what I'm gonna call my new like stream series or something, because that's what I love to warn new growers when they got like their whole tent kit on the counter and they're like, "Oh man, you know, my homie's gonna give me some beans and blah 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 blah." They're so fucking excited. I'm like, all right, don't overwater and take it fucking easy because you're gonna love this. It's gonna help everything. And then they come back a couple weeks and they're like, yeah, this shit's, I'm done. And I'm like, I know, it takes one to know one, you know, kind of shit.
And you're probably going to spend 5 times as much as you think you're going to right now. Like that's probably what's going to happen. I'm just going to be real. I'm sure the YouTube said it was only going to be $200, but guess what? It's not. You know what I mean? You're going to find something.
You just you run into stuff and you learn, and you accidentally, your kid decides he wants to try and put strawberries at the base of your plant, and you learn that the commercial name for spider mite, the commercial brand name for spider mites at the store is strawberry starts, and then you have to learn how to do that. We talk about that regularly on the show, is how much people bring home from Lowe's and Home Depot, and when they think they can stuff in some plants from other places that are from a nursery, and they would absolutely think to quarantine clones from, say, another cannabis grow, but they think that because they bought it from the grocery store that they can just plop it right in their grow. And that's something that, you know, we certainly hear regular issues. I'm sure you having issues like that as well.
I kind of tell the fucking newbies the whole Kevin Costner spiel. Like if you grow it, they will come, especially if you're gonna stuff a whole bunch of plants in a small tent, which is a typical first timer. I can't tell you how many times I've said like, people like, please, one plant per 2 or 4 square feet or 2 square feet. Like just take it, just like, you know, and all the tent kits, they package those systems up with 4 pots on that picture. So when people see it initially their first time, they're like, I can grow 4 plants in those 4 pots. Like, I'm sorry. I deal with it a lot. But yes, that it's like even and all commercial settings, whether it's a cannabis farm or a nursery at Home Depot, if you stuff enough plants in a small enough space, they will come. It's funny. I try to preach preventative IPM practices because that's the only thing that keeps you from like that oh fuck you moment. Like, even when I kind of that oh fuck moment, like when I get a lot of guys that want to start hydro, they're like, I can do it. I can stretch a res for 2-3 weeks. And I'm like, you can, but you got to manage that pH. And some people are like, oh, what do you mean manage the pH? I don't know how to do that. That's too, and I'm like, all right, well, if it's not, if it could be too much, just do the res swap once a week and, run advanced nutrients, balances your pH pretty well for 7 days before it starts to get a little swingy. And some people just love hearing that. They're like, okay, I just got to do it once a week. And if they say, well, can I stretch the res? I said, absolutely. Like, there's a couple of reasons why people do replenish the res weekly. And let's just say a DWC5 gal specifically. And if you don't want it, you don't have to. The plant's still going to be okay. Oh fuck! But if you don't manage that pH and you're going out the door Wednesday morning when you're going to work or school or whatever, or some other responsibility, and you notice the garden's out of whack, are you going to have that 20 minutes, a half an hour to swap that 5 gal? And a lot of people hearing that reason, they kind of like, okay, well, I don't want to be caught off guard. I don't want to have problems, so I'll just do the preventative maintenance, even with swapping reses and stuff. It's interesting, you know, it all goes back to people's personal flavors and shit. And it's at the point where I don't even try to judge it anymore. I'm just like, yo, these are your options. You know, let me know. You know, there's too many of them, so I'm gonna try to keep them simple, but you know, and
Yeah.
inexpensive because of that
Yeah,
five
whatever smells
Gs.
good. Whatever smells
Yeah.
good.
I think I mentioned to you guys previously before we went live that I spent 5 Gs on my first, you know, little tiny little crate setup, and it was something that I still think about. So I try to help people not make that mistake too. I've been having good success with little first time growers. The little HLG 65 little watt quantum boards, it's like $100. You know, a bag of soil, $25. You know, most people have pots and stuff like that. And I've noticed with beginners too, sometimes tents aren't the best option, especially if they have a room that they can just hang a little 65 water in. It's never going to cause these problems. And sometimes people they'll still want that tent just because what they saw, and it gets too hot and they start having issues and so on and so forth.
So what cultivars are really popular out there in New Jersey? That's something that we don't know hardly anything about here on the show.
I mean, when you start getting into
Or-
Massachusetts and Maine, or really any other states than New Jersey specifically, there aren't really many in Jersey, honestly. Um, a lot of the facilities are even running like beans. People are getting off seedsmans and stuff. There's not even really good commercial. Well, no, there's a couple. No, there's one, but I'm not even sure if he hunted all of his phenos. He just opened up recently, in northern Jersey. Not a lot of good. I mean, there's some OG growers, some guys that have been doing it for a while. And the most like local strain that I've seen on as a Turnpike 95 and stuff like that. A lot of Maine and Mass strains, but not too many coming straight out of Jersey. And I'm not huge on hunting anymore, especially since I started the business because I just haven't had a lot of good time. Um, so I don't know a lot about the northeast part of the coast, but in Jersey, you have a lot of pop-up IG breeders, which is kind of concerning because I'm worried the gene pool is going to get a little tainted. And I mean, there's like a lot, 4 or 5 of them that are actively promoting and selling seeds online that are customers that are like, oh yeah, I'm doing all this out of my 4x4 learning how to grow. And it's just like, wait, what? Um, so be careful. You know, it was different 5 to 10 years ago when there was a few breeders, notorious breeders out there, but I feel like now there are a lot, and I don't know much about the West Coast. You know, the biggest ones, I would say the ones I hear the most about are definitely Capulator. He's got like everybody on IG from what I can tell. A lot of people are familiar with him. They're familiar with the Mac One. And that's really about it. Some people are familiar with guys like Justin Cron, but it's mostly like businesses because we don't have that that old family in a sense over here. We really don't. There's a lot of people that come over, and I'm starting to see a lot of people coming over from out west because Jersey is going to be like the new, wild east. But it's interesting. I mean, in some of the professional levels that I've dealt with, it even seems like the out of state conglomerates on this large scale don't really have it locked down on specifically a scale of production. And it baffles me because I'm homies with a lot of the employees in these facilities. And they come to me with a lot of the problems they're having. We do commercial consulting and stuff like that, IPM specifically a lot. Um, And it's a lot of times most of the jobs we've gotten is because the homies come in that actually work with the plants and they suggest it to the management. And it's weird because you think, well, I would think that these big mega conglomerates, some of them Canadian based, some of them Cali based, some of them multi-state operational. You think they'd have this shit together after all the billions of dollars they've thrown at it to get all these fucking licenses and stuff. But a lot of the operating 6 facilities that initially started with Christie, I would say at least 4 of them wound up firing their head grower every year. I should be careful. Um, but yes, production has been a big issue in New Jersey specifically, and hence why the patient market is so underprovided for, and any expansion of the recreational market would essentially be insulting to the patients. When they first announced after the vote and everything that they were planning on working on the rec market, they a lot of people, patients specifically, called into their policymakers and said, look, if you don't fucking put Homegrow on this, like, you're fucking fired. It's the first time ever in the last 3 years that I've been, kind of paying attention to this, that I've actually felt like the policymakers felt the heat of the general public, and a lot of people are saying that that is potentially why they dropped cybacillin on everybody when they were supposed to announce the rec market for the first time in January, about a month ago. And that's the first thing that held everything up. Then it was taxes and it was all this other stuff. But a large majority, I'm told, is because of the pressure the patients put on the people. Because if the people can't get their medicine now, I mean, I'm not even a patient in the state legally, and I find it fucking offensive that they get brought in this. Anyway, that's too much in my opinion.
Are you sure that part of the shortage wasn't that Christie ate all the edibles?
Interesting. Interesting.
It's a theory.
Just to give you guys a little concept, when Christie put this together, one of the original licenses he gave out was to a Russian organization, and it was his intentional purpose to give it to them so they would fail and make it look bad and pull the whole fucking thing. So it's really kind of weird. I know that when Cali started making changes, a lot of the policy, and this was a long time ago even, not policymakers, but a lot of people that were conscious of cannabis as a medicine and wanted to kind of reflect those changes here, and government, organizations, or so on and so forth, have been really pushing on this and trying to really prepare for it, because it's inevitable. It's always been inevitable ever since the ball got rolling out west. um, and it the more and more I look at it, the more and more it seems like it's they're just trying to figure out what the fuck they want to do. Getting as much control, obviously, as possible for themselves and constituents and stuff like that, and that's been holding things up. But now with the reelection coming up, they have to get things done if they want to be reelected, specifically to have their hands in the money pot for the next 4 years. So that's the only real reason that I feel like Homegrow for patients is on the horizon in New Jersey. It's the only way they can dissipate that heat while getting the rec market and what they really want. They've been doing a lot of stalling lately, and it's looking like it could potentially be more stalling time, very specifically as far as when it's going to happen. um it seems pretty clear at this point, though, that when they do announce this big rec expansion, they're at some point afterwards, they're going to allow patients to home grow, specifically because the state is not producing, and they're not really, and it doesn't look like they're going to add many more grow licenses in this next expansion. um and it looks like a large majority of the bigger expansions will be coming relatively soon. I mean, there's big buyouts going on right now. I'm seeing, again, Canadian companies coming in and buying up licenses and stuff like that. So it's a even more of a kind of reinforcement that the rec market is going to happen soon, because otherwise these Canadian companies wouldn't be investing all this money on a farm that well, yeah,
Well,
they wouldn't be investing that much money.
a lot of workers from New York live in New Jersey, and I think that's a large part of it.
It's interesting. The tri-state area is it's an interesting place. You know, I was fortunate to get down south in Virginia for a few years and to spend some time out west, but it's definitely a special place.
I was
Uh,
born and raised in Philadelphia, so it was it's really nice to have someone on from where I'm from. I'm definitely looking forward to having the first aquaponic cannabis grower out there to work with to come back, and I'll be sure to make sure we try to do it. Where are you at actually in the state?
we're exit 98 off the Parkway, which is kind of like dead center central Jersey, a few miles off the beach. So I'm from a small beach town called Manasquan, which is unfortunately about 4 or 5 miles away from the infamous Belmar, New Jersey. If you ever saw that TV show with the people that, mind you, are not from New Jersey, by the way. But anyway, yes, I can't even think of the name. Snooky is all I could
You
think
don't
of.
sound bitter about that at all.
No, not at all. Because it's there was a really couple good vines. I don't know if you ever saw it, but it was like a bunch of a bunch of guys fist pumping in a car. It's like going to Belmar in my car. And it was anyway, Vinny's new haircut, stuff like that. But anyway, yeah, it's a small beach town, and when it gets cold, a lot of the tourists leave and stuff like that. So it's weird. New Jersey gets a really particularly bad image, and there are bad parts of Jersey. I'm not saying it's all fucking beaches and fucking meadows, but there are some bad parts and there are some really good parts. So.
I think so. I used to go down to the Pine Barrens for some farm animal auctions, and I'll tell you what, like people think they've heard like Cajun and like these other things that like they started off as English many hundred years ago, but it isn't anymore. There's a whole Pine Barrens language that's like that. That's like English, Dutch, and like some other just random shit thrown in. And if anyone's from ever been a lot of time in southern Jersey, they know what I'm talking about. You don't hear it often, but if they're like at like some kind of like little community gathering, the language changes completely to this other language that's totally inaudible to anyone from Philadelphia. That's for sure.
My girlfriend has family down there, and it's like 2 or 3 families living on a commune, and it's just like they just keep on building sheds, and the family just gets bigger and bigger. It's crazy, the Pines. Yeah, there's some like, and it's great. It's great country, and for Jersey, I mean, you can go west to the trail and stuff like that, or you can really go south because Lord knows you can't go north unless you go past the city and stuff like that, and then New York is beautiful.
And you guys
Um,
got that Jersey Devil that eats rippers, I hear.
yeah, it's pretty spooky. There's some like we have a magazine called Weird New Jersey here, and every month they come out with an episode. Every month they come out with a magazine, and it's funny. I haven't seen it in a while. I hope they're still doing it. Print's having a hard time, but yeah, I mean, New Jersey is fucking. It's pretty weird. There's a lot of weird. I mean, there's weird ass people everywhere. Don't get me wrong. Um, the only thing that's different about New Jersey specifically is we're the most condensed state out of all of them, and it's definitely true. I mean, even in the beach towns, I mean, my neighbors' houses are not more. We're typically there's not 4 or 5 feet in between them. Uh, when I went out west, the 2 things I'll never forget were how fucking big the trees were. And how far the houses were apart from each other and stuff like that. Here, it's intense. It makes it difficult for a lot of growers with the odor. And a lot of people are still, even to this day, what's interesting is the electrical company concern. Like I have a lot of people that are like, are they gonna know because I'm growing? I was like, and unofficially speaking, I mean, I, unless they're stealing it, I don't think any paying customer, well, they take customers away from themselves. But a lot of misconceptions like that, I still, and buying seeds online, or the cops gonna raid me if I buy seeds online. No, it's not, and stuff like that.
So what that's a good question that we haven't had a lot of good talk on, is what about smell mitigation for that home grower scale? What type of options do you recommend?
Mostly just carbon scrubbing because it's easy. And it goes out a lot less often than a lot of the oils. I'm not too big on Ona personally. I know it's really good in an exhaust situation, but most of my customers are almost never in a strictly exhaust situation unless you buy that special Ona box which attaches to your fan and stuff. Most of them just scrub the carbon, and I just warn them, when the fan turns off, there might be odor leaks. They're gonna be minor, nothing to really stink up a room and stuff like that, but nothing's fucking foolproof, and if you're gonna run the carbon filter and through the exhaust and out a window or something, to intermittently check that, because carbon filters, there's no due date on them. It's when the carbon absorbs enough odor.
Yep. And then you can take it and you put it in your pond and use it for your pond filter. And then you can take it and then you put it in your compost.
The Costa Maine, that living soil company by us, just started adding biochar and stuff like that to their raised bed mixes, and we're starting to see that. The company Costa Maine is pretty cool, I will say, and they're spreading pretty quickly. We don't have many. We have herb out here. Are you guys familiar with URB?
URB? No.
It's like a humic acid and microbe product, and I will say it's kind of like when I sell the Great White Premium to a first-time grower as a micro product. I can there's very few things I'll not aggressively, but I'll actually push on a customer. I'll be like, look, it's $13. I shit you not. If you come back in 2 weeks and say you're not impressed, I'll give you your money back, because it's one of those products that it gets results. And with herb specifically, it's a combination of humic acid and microbes. To say whether it's the humic acid, to say whether it's a microbe, is kind of like my beef with mammoth peas, specifically with the alfalfa extract and the microbes. Like, they don't really specify what exactly is in there, so it's
Well,
sometimes.
I can tell you, at least in aquaponics, we like it a lot as something that people can use, periodically to seed those phosphorus chelating microbes in their aquaponic system, and then to help maintain those levels. Especially when we're doing initial cycling, we're huge fans of it. It's one of the few things that I ever tested in like a lab setting that had like a pretty large difference in terms of actual tissue content.
The herb's pretty thick and muddy, being highly concentrated humic, but if you're as a top dress intermittently, I mean, I'm sure you guys are using humic.
Oh no, they're great to complement each other. It's not a one replaces the other. They work great together.
That's one product in particular, and that's from a New Jersey company that I get a lot of great reactions from. A lot of guys are really happy, and they swear by it from then on. That there's been very few products that have that effect on people. So typically when I see it, I start suggesting it, and it winds up working out for everybody.
That's awesome. Well, did you have anything else you wanted to mention? What are is there anything else that are maybe some common themes you're seeing, or common trends in cannabis before we go? And then what, how do people find you, and definitely tell people how to learn more about you and your what you do.
generally speaking, I think the other biggest misconception or question I get a lot about is how to get into the industry. I did like a sesh a couple of weeks where like people just kept asking. So I was like, we're doing a sesh, it's about industry talk. And it was pretty much just like me going through examples of other customers that has essentially been very inexperienced when it comes to growing. Um, and they come to me and they're like, hey, should I apply for this job? And I said, what the fuck, why not? Why not? One of them wound up doing it, and now a year later, he's like third grower from the top. He's got multiple rooms and stuff, and he kind of always says, "Oh, thank you so much." I'm like, dude, I didn't do anything. Like, I literally just said, I don't. But especially now with COVID, my best advice, if you want to be a grower, just apply to all of them right now because COVID is making staffing very difficult. Um, yeah, I'm looking at kind of communicating with the head growers and kind of setting up an internship program potentially in the future, so we could help train them and get them in there and stuff like that. But for the time being, if you want to get in there, just apply. Some growers, they don't want people with experience because it's like, you don't have to unlearn potential bad habits and stuff like that. And a lot of home growers have a hard, well, I shouldn't say a lot of them, but some home growers have a hard time going to commercial growing because they want to baby all the plants and they don't really get the whole production aspect of it. And then there's kind of resentment from the management and stuff like that. That's a common problem that they deal with. I'm told at least. So just apply. Long story short, we're suregrow.com. Our IG is probably the social media platform best to contact us. Excuse me. At SureGrow Hydro on IG. We're on Twitter and stuff like that and YouTube, and we're not very active, but we will be once we start streaming on all those platforms on the near future. But IG is the best place. We are located in Ocean Township, New Jersey, to be specific. We're just north of the Asbury Circle on Route 35, right outside of the infamous Asbury Park, New Jersey. So it's pretty easy to find us. There aren't many hydro shops. So if you just Google Shore Grow Hydro and in New Jersey, chances are Google's going to show you us. We do our weekly live streams, grower circle sessions every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock, and the topics vary. Sometimes it's just, hey, let's just all fucking just do straight Q&A. It could be anything, and it's less me talking. I actually prefer not to talk on the sessions. I like to have guests. If you guys would ever like to join us, please feel free. A lot of aquaponic growers. We used to do an aquaponic class. We're not doing it next year, but we love to work together with you guys.
Yeah, sure, man. All right, let's come on. It's always fun to go on other people's shows and be the guest for once.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like now we get to sit here while you talk. Like you were just saying how much better it is, and I'm just like, yeah, that's what.
I love it, man. Yeah, in person the classes are nice, and if you're really looking to get a sense of the community, the live stream and the classes more specifically, because people tend to be a little bit more comfortable face to face. The classes pre-COVID were in the 20 count, but now during COVID we shut them down for a while. But now it's like 10 faces at a class, so it's even a little bit more intimate. And I've noticed when we first started growing, the proportion of vegetables to tomato growers was almost 50-50 3 years ago, believe it or not. But lately we've been flexing that word of mouth, and it's changed dramatically. So the classes are the best way to shoot this shit with like-minded individuals, as I so often like to say.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button there. I was trying to unmute my mic. That's also those local classes are a great way to meet local breeders to get involved with, and to meet local people that can help you with local advice on things, and and help build your local community, because that's going to be your best point of support, especially in some of these newer markets. And then especially if you need to band together to go run to the state house to make sure they don't pass something stupid. Having everyone at least on a mailing list is pretty good too.
we're heavily involved with the grassroots community, specifically in the last 3 years, because when we first started opening our doors, there weren't a lot of sales. So it became like, all right, well, how do we reach the community? And the biggest reason that I personally want to do the classes was because for 13 to 14 years of my life, the number one rule in New Jersey was just simply don't tell anybody, which is easier said than done. And it definitely, I can't tell you how many times I will have homies or come into the shop just to talk grow because they still feel that way and they just haven't been able to talk to anybody about it. And that's exactly how the fuck I felt for so long. So that's what's really the classes are really about, because it's tough to even, even contextually speaking, even uphold one's vocabulary at live streaming in a state that's not necessarily legal. And a month or two, I mean, even saying the word cannabis with the logo in the background would have scared the shit out of me, just because there's so much involved risk wise, um to educating people like this. But we're just talking about tomatoes, so it's all good, you know.
I remember that was when I lived on the East Coast out in Philadelphia. We used to love going to Montreal for that reason. We could go up there, and I remember summer of legalization was 2004, and everything flew for a little while up there, and it was just a nice place. You could go up to the high time shops and buy your seeds and come home and allegedly, and have a nice little setup going. So, but you couldn't tell anybody once you got home. That was the thing. But it's nice to be able to have these community groups. I know there's one out here. They're starting nearby that we'll be participating in, and trying to help educate. And I know there's a one in Tulsa that we've been on, or I've been on lately. They have a Zoom group because of the COVID stuff, so they just meet on Zoom now. And kind of neat to see everybody still kind of trying to keep the education going despite the craziness.
Yeah, yeah. you know um the I've been fuck, what the fuck was I just gonna say? Oh, sorry, YouTube. Oh, there's been one breeder I have been messing with a lot lately out of Vancouver, and it was just kind of very serendipitous. One of my customers been, and this guy, he's not official or anything. He's essentially a backyard breeder, but I've been talking to him about what he's been doing with autoflowers recently and how he's been breeding them. And it's been kind of interesting. I'm seeing a lot of new beginners like autoflowers. Um, uh, and I don't really push them away from it. I think it's a good way to learn really quickly. The first time is kind of going to be painful in a sense for most first timers. So if you can get it over in 80 days, it's way better than 120 or 160. But that's just my 2 cents. But yeah, those are getting more and more popular. I feel like, if I'm not mistaken, out west, there's autoflowers still aren't necessarily accepted, generally speaking, in the community yet.
Yeah, so here's the issue is that one, I have to buy seeds from somebody each time. So people don't like that. Two, as a commercial producer, unless I have ultra stable genetics, it doesn't make sense from a commercial standpoint, because the stability of those genetics, is not, there are some exemptions, but it's not to where I can buy acres worth of seed, right? And it's all going to be fine. They just don't have those down. It's not that stable yet, generally speaking. So, from a commercial standpoint, it doesn't have a whole lot of value in that realm. So, but from a standpoint of a newer grower, I know Jeff Lowenfeld has a wonderful book, if you're familiar with teaming with microbes, or teaming with nutrients, or teaming with fungi. He has a great book about how to do autoflowers, and why they're really good for kind of mom and pop people that haven't grown in 30 or 40 years or ever grown cannabis before. And they're often, and when I teach aquaponic classes, they're great for people that just want to throw something in next to their tomatoes. They already have their aquaponic set up for their vegetables at 16 hours or 14 hours. Most of them are at 16 hours anyway. So they can just toss it in there with their dual root zone pot, stick it in the bed, make sure that it's got some feed, germinate it right in there, and let it rip. So from that standpoint, it makes life a lot easier. But the the genetics really have, maybe just the last 2 years, year and a half, 2 years, really been to where they're, stabilized and exceptional enough for people to want to grow them. There's a lot of people kind of in the smaller breeder space that are doing it. I've seen some pretty large ones, people pulling down, over a pound on an auto, but they're not common, right? So they're super rare. And then, not a lot of people understand how to, they can be stressed out a little easier. They'll always do well, but they're not always going to do perfect. They are a little bit more finicky sometimes. Also can tend to hermaphrodite a little bit more because a lot of the genetics are very pigeonholed, right? They're very, not a lot of genetic diversity in a lot of them. So that's some of the other issues. You have the same similar issues with CBD, right? A lot of the CBD stuff is pretty not diverse genetically, right? So you have similar issues with those CBG, cultivars are again another one. There's just not a lot of diversity yet, and it's causing problems.
I feel like there's just a lack of due diligence on the back breeding. When I talked to the Vancouver guy about how he does his autoflower genetics, it was really kind of interesting. He specifically mentioned doing about three grows of back breeding before he'll take that third variety and then seed them out, and then like you mentioned, there's never going to be that genetic stability with autoflowers. I shouldn't say never, but at least not for another fucking a while.
Wow.
Considering it took what 5 to 10 years just for them to get stabilized to the point where I mean I have some newbies, and I mean that pulling on their first run anywhere from like 3 to 4, getting up the potential up to 6 to 8. I got some hydro guys pulling like for example DWC 5-gallon 2x4 with like maybe like even a couple 100 watts of light, not even a lot LED, that are still pulling off of 8 ounces off of some plants. And I think it's really, I know this guy specifically, I can't remember exactly if it's the male or the female that he keeps back cross. It's a photo female, but it's just it's a blue whale if I'm not mistaken, because it's fast flowering and it's heavy yielding. And then he'll take like more like Mephisto's AVT or Colorado Cookies or Dutch Passion, all these other popular strains, and backbreed them with the white whale photo. Oh yeah, it's driving me nuts. But yeah, and that's how he essentially is able to produce seeds. And since he's a backyard breeder, he hooks my buddy up pretty inexpensively, to the point where it's like no different than a clone and a cut. um and I don't know, I'm interested to see where it goes, because to me autos are kind of like LEDs. When they first came out, they were really bad at first, but then they got better and better and better. And who knows, it could potentially be the future. I mean, no, it's never gonna replace photos. Excuse me, what am I saying?
Well, I could also see the government, only allowing, and this is going to be me, and I've said this for years, conspiracy theory, Steve, the government saying, all right, well, everyone can only grow ruderalis at home now, and then, taking that away from people so that they can regulate it and tax it. And, I could see some governments doing that.
I feel like going down the fucking rabbit hole. I mean, even like apple trees, like you can't take, and most fruit from back in the day when it was like a super luxury, and there were definitely people that wanted the control of, for some reason all these seeds are genetically, for some genetic reason, all these seeds are not you know
But
viable.
that's been a long running thing with apples. Almost all apples are grown from scions because the notorious instability with the seeds. You can grow every single seed that comes off of an apple tree, and every single one will be a different pheno.
Is it the same with like avocados and citruses and stuff like that too? Is
Yeah,
that what it is?
their DNA base is huge. It's a lot of certain trees are like that. There's a lot of trees that are like that are just have immense variety, and it's for defense against think about it evolutionarily, right? If it's that diverse, like, it doesn't give a shit if it doesn't taste good to you, right? Like, it just wants to survive and make sure that, like, whatever of the 100 plagues that are going to come through its 200 and some year lifetime, it can survive. So that's why it benefits it evolutionarily to have an immense amount of diversity, especially for something that's a longer living organism. It would very much benefit it to have that kind of diversity on a genetic level. Just evolutionarily, it makes a lot of sense.
Hells
Just
yeah.
sucks for us as people who enjoy the fruit. We gotta just clone the ones that we find that taste good. That's why Johnny Appleseed's responsible for so many different seeds, because he planted 130 million seeds or some ridiculous amount, right? So 8 or 12 of them were good, right? So there you go, right? Or I'm sure those numbers are wrong, but that's generally the whole deal with Johnny Appleseed, right? It was just the fact that he just planted so many that a lot of them also were responsible for your standard cider apples now. Were also ones that came from Johnny Appleseed, which is pretty funny. So if you're a big fan of Angry Orchard or anything like that, you got him to thank. So
sounds about right, genetically speaking, and hunting and stuff like that. I feel like just the better the odds, the better the chance,
All right. Well, I know it's getting quite late there out on the East Coast, so I'll cut you loose. I really appreciate you taking the time, and I'll definitely be sure to try and look you up when I'm out that way. I do end up on the East Coast now and then.
Hells yeah, especially down by the beach. Let me know, absolutely.
Heck yeah, come up there in the summertime. I haven't been to the down the shore in quite a while.
Nice, the shore. Yeah, it's here we call it the beach specific. I'm sure it's a lot of the people from up north that call it the shore. But my partner insisted, and I, of course, I wasn't gonna say shit. So it is. So yeah, we could definitely chill. Just let me know. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks again.
Hells yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah, anytime, brother.
Sweet. All right. Well, that was really cool. So one last thing, what is your website and Instagram again before we go let you go?
It's www.shoregrow.com. You can click the shop to see what we have in inventory and stuff. The learning center is on the first page. If you're curious about, I got a couple really good IPM posts and shit up there, cloning, decent posts and stuff, but you can check it out. And the IG is at Shoregrow Hydro, no spaces, no nothing. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on.
Heck yeah, I will. I'll catch you later, brother.
Cheers. Appreciate it. All righty. That was a lot of fun. If you guys don't know, I'm from the East Coast, so it was really cool to have a fellow East Coaster on the show. We haven't had a chance to really talk about that market yet, so it was really neat. Next week we have Coughing with Canna Queen. She's a Oklahoma woman cannabis podcaster. She does a lot of women's cannabis content and a lot of just different cannabis content around Oklahoma. So she's super cool. We're gonna have her on next week, so we'll have her on next Thursday, and then we'll have an advocate that has a daughter that is currently taking cannabis-based medicine for seizures. So we'll have her on a week or two after that. And we have a couple of other cool guests that are going to be coming on. We're trying to diversify the guests a little bit more, and try to have a little bit more topics on. As far as cannabis topics go in the new year. I'll still have a lot of aquaponic content, but we'll have a little bit of extra cannabis stuff. I'm also going to have a lot more recorded content. We have a lot of stuff we're going to be putting together. I have a new series on aquaponic KNF and some other cool things that'll be coming out soon, and trying to give you guys some of the basics. And what else is going on? Be sure to check out the apmjclass.com. Marty and I have the very extensive aquaponic cannabis class. Marty's been throwing new sections up every day or two. We have a whole bunch of new content queued up for right after, was it next week? I think it is. We're going to start recording some of the new additional content that's kind of post-class. So we have some different builds that we're doing and some other things that we're putting together that will be showing off and doing some new content and some interesting things, some small system stuff and some more kind of home scale, apartment scale kind of stuff. So that'll be cool. We'll be adding that to the course as well. Yeah, you can check that out at apmjclass.com. Again, super extensive class on aquaponic cannabis, everything from permitting all the way through design, design considerations, and a whole bunch more. So it's a really great class, and you'll get quite a bit out of it. We have a whole bunch of reference guides and tables and all different types of things in there. We also have the apmjnewts.com as well. You can check that out. We have a whole slew of aquaponic nutrients available. Use them in your aquaponics, your hydroponics, or your soil. They're all fish safe. So if you do overdose, you won't hurt the fish down the stream as long as you don't go crazy with it. Help provide that for your system is the easy solution. Definitely check that out. I've been working on a bunch of newer projects. We have a bunch of larger scale stuff in the works. I think you guys are going to like it. We'll be off to another state here at the end of the month for a couple of days to check in on a grow that's going up right now. And then we have a couple of grows here in the area, and then some other places as well. And then hopefully the second half of the year, we can start doing some more international stuff. We have a whole bunch of cool projects as soon as this damn virus is gone, lined up that are basically the only reason why I'm not there right now is because of this damn virus. So really hoping that, maybe come July or August that I can get back to some of the cooler projects and more tropical places than where I am right now. That's for sure. I know it's quite cold today and not fun. So, and windy as hell. So, other than that, just doing a little bit of seed breeding and just working on scheming on some cool stuff that I can't share right now. Yeah, really just trying to catch up on stuff. Oh, Marty and I will be launching sometime after July the new advanced aquaponic class. We want to make sure we get all of the cannabis stuff all squared away and buffered up before and fully launched before we move on to the next class. But we'll have all that up there and here soon. Just kind of adjusting some stuff here last minute, and then we'll have the advanced aquaponic class for vegetables and just general aquaponics coming up second half of the year. So definitely look forward to that. We'll be doing another virtual aquaponic cannabis conference second half of the year as well. So definitely looking forward to that as well. And the book's coming along, getting a little bit of that done each week. So that's chipping away again with the virus, having a little bit more time available. And then, yeah. Just check out, yeah, Marty, you there? Or did you have to step away from him? It looks like Marty had to step away. All right. Well, you can check out Marty at AP Meds. We just uploaded a video of him for the virtual aquaponic cannabis conference on my YouTube at Potent Ponics. He did a wonderful talk about kind of the general theory on aquaponic cannabis. Him and I kind of talked about different topics over the 2 different days. So if you like the talk that I did, definitely check out the one that he did. It's about an hour long. It's quite extensive. Yeah, definitely check out the merch too. If you're looking to get some t-shirts or hoodies for aquaponic cannabis or just aquaponics, we have that available in the description. That gives us a couple bucks. It helps pay for the hosting for all the podcast stuff. And yeah, you can find me at Potent Ponics at SoundCloud, YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, all the places. I think we're in like over 200 different RSS feeds out in the universe now. So definitely check that out. And we will catch you guys again next week. I have some more recorded content will be going up, so definitely check it out. Every Wednesday we'll have some recorded content, and then we'll have the live show on Thursdays. We'll have some other recorded content here on probably Tuesdays that'll be going up as well. So we'll have some different stuff going on, and eventually we'll get back to 2 shows a week. But right now I'm just a little bit pulled on time. So we are going to do just the one show per week for now. So, all right. Thanks a lot, everybody. We'll be back again next week. Also, be sure to check out our friend shows. We were just recently over on the Growcast and had a great episode there. I was just over on the Autoflower show on Monday. I was also on, and I believe they released the episode tomorrow, on the Smokehouse Shit Show. So I believe their episode goes out tomorrow. And then I was also on something else. What else was I on? I forget. We'll figure it out. There was something else that we did a recording for recently, and I'll think of it. But I know it's not been posted yet, so we'll just talk about it next episode. So.